Welcome to Beyond the Creative. Every episode, we're exposing the daily conversations we have about campaigns we think are interesting, insightful, or different, dissecting, reverse engineering, and breaking down what they were trying to achieve.
But this isn't just about us giving our opinions. Each episode will ground those opinions against creative principles we use every day. So if you're curious about marketing as a service, behavioral design, and the importance of audience insights, you're in great company.
This is Beyond the Creative, our way of learning, growing, and ultimately fueling our never-ending quest for delivering creative that changes what people think, feel, and do. This week, the theme is Cannes Lions, just in case there's any confusion there with the other Cannes Awards, which we're not going to talk about today. But yeah, Cannes Lions is the theme for this episode, Chomoi. Tell us about, you put this forward. Let's face it, you put it forward. So tell us a little bit why you think this is a good theme for episode 2.
Yeah, I always love to see what's coming out of Cannes, and you're really looking at, what people are saying is their best work. So it's always good to sort of keep an eye out and see what we can kind of like take from it, look at trends, and just get a feel for what people are doing and what people are putting out in the industry.
And would you say, in your opinion, where does Cannes rank in terms of awards?
I think the thing for me where I go to on this is, do clients care? Is it just a sort of pat on the back for the industry? Obviously, yes, there's that, isn't there? But, can we look at the work that's been put out there and learn something that then we can apply to our own work that we do for clients and brands? That for me is kind of the way I see it, really.
So first up, we've got Superhuman, Channel 4's campaign for the Paralympics 2020, but it actually happened in 2021 thanks to COVID. This took home the top prize, Grand Prix at this year's Cannes. Amazing craft, brilliant piece of work. I think we should just watch it and roll the VT.
What's next for Kadina Cox? She's already went under huge pressure.
No, she's set her sights on Tokyo.
She'll do it again.
So you wanna be a boxer in a golden ring? Can you punch like a southbound freight train? Tell me just one thing. Can you move in a world like a hummingbird's wing if you need to? Ooh, that's fast. Can you bob, can you weave, can you fake, can deceive when you need to? Or you might as well quit if you haven't got it. So you wanna be a boxer, wanna be the champ. There's a golden boy inside you, not a punched out tramp. If you listen and you learn, there's a honor you can earn.
This year's Paralympics have been postponed.
When you do see the crown, you're a king, not a clown, a contender.
Well, you might as well quit.
If you haven't got it,
But you might as well quit.
if you haven't got it, in the range of something in the hand, God. If you have the swing joke, get what goes to hand, God. Get quite swift, if you haven't got it, get the drift. Put him in the range of chicken and a God. Let me have a win joke, so in your apartment, chicken will crow. Let's go! Might as well
this is building on this film, right? It's all about, this. I love the headline: to be a Paralympian, there's got to be something wrong with you. I'm loving that play on words. I love the play on the words of the superhuman as well, and just what they're trying to get across here in the piece. Beautifully put together. You can see why it's award winning. The effort that went into this is, it blows the mind really. Just the edit is sublime. Set to brilliant music. I love the juxtaposition between the everyday life challenges that they face through the disabilities that they have, but then the extra level of kind of challenges they have as athletes, that mental grit. This feels very gritty as a piece. It's quite raw, isn't it, in terms of what they've shot.
I was actually looking out for that sort of do they put in a kind of everyday barrier? And you get that with the kebab shop moment, don't you, sort of near the end.
Is it a kebab shop? I thought was it? I think it's just a cafe.
Oh, is it the local caf that they haven't sort of upgraded their access for wheelchair users? And I was kind of watching it and looking at, are we going to see all that stuff? And it's they managed to actually put those messages in a really neat way. But the takeaway for me when you're watching it is that the people on screen are not there because of a body difference. They're there because they're athletes. And I think that's where they've taken it, which is great, because you listen to the track, you're kind of hearing their struggle as an athlete.
Yeah.
And again, it's like with marginalized groups, it's so important that we sort of listen and understand how they see the world, and maybe they see it slightly differently. And if we are not from that group, and we're making a film about these athletes, that we don't bring our own misconceptions to the party. So you hear the struggle of actually being an athlete, and I think the fact that they've taken it to that level is just great. It's a real example that we can copy. Do you follow me?
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. They're clearly there because they're athletes. That's the reason they've been cast for the piece. That's why they've been selected, because they're some of the best Paralympic athletes in the UK or Great Britain. I think it's very inspirational. Clearly, they're sacrificing their bodies, their families. There's the guy on the bike saying "Happy Birthday" on the phone, and is clearly missing birthdays. I think the key thing here is this is much more grounded and earthy and human. And this is building on the previous campaign that Channel 4 did, which was called We're the Superhumans. I don't know if you remember that one, but that was a lot more glamorous, a lot more upbeat, less gritty, a lot more kind of, wow, we're super inspirational, basically. And so I think it's interesting to see the campaign evolve. It's a very similar concept. They've just got more gritty and down to earth with it on this one.
And for me, it's the difficult balance between, being real and doing it every day, but then actually raising it up a level and celebrating it. So sort of coming out with a bit of a kind of energetic track. And I think that's what's really nice about this. It's gritty and it's every day. And it's there are ups and downs, and they play the downs a lot into this. You see the bloody tooth and all of these visuals, but then there's a certain kind of upbeatness to it, isn't there? It's okay, you pick yourself up again. You can have a down day. Olympics getting postponed. That's probably that's a big downer, isn't it? But there's this positivity that isn't saccharine, that has energy. I think that it's that grit and determination that you get from Nike ads. They've done this in a really sensitive, but upbeat, punchy way, I think.
Yeah, and I think it makes me think differently. It makes me empathize with the struggles for those with disabilities. And I think those little points, like with the cafe, it just brings that home. It makes you think, wow, on a daily basis, there are these challenges. It does lead into changing how I think, feel, and do. We talked about that in the intro. That's a big part of what we're considering when we're trying to make creative. It's changing how people think, which then leads on to how they feel, emotions and feeling and thoughts all interconnected, and then what you end up doing and behaving like. And I think it definitely raised my empathy level, and it's encouraging me. I can feel myself encouraged to look at the disability, but see past it. It made me less afraid to have a conversation about disability.
There's this other thing that's doing, isn't it? It's in terms of sort of standing up for marginalized groups and, fighting against stigmas, fighting against the way the world is set up maybe for able-bodied people, the line at the end is just great. It's like they continue to kind of push, and it's almost like two fingers up at the world that's like fighting them. And I think that spirit is, we could have more of that, couldn't we, in our work? That it's like it's not aggressive, but it is a bit like, well, F you, I am going to do this.
Yeah. And I think it's also, it's really great. There's nothing really being sold here. Well, is there something being sold here? 'Cause it's very purpose driven, isn't it? It's like, it's great content in that perspective. And I think that's also why it's easy to love it, because what they're really selling is the celebration of, physical achievement, the Paralympic Games and what goes into getting there, and exposing that journey. But there's no product for sale. And I think that's in a way how, that's wonderful. And I think that's why these campaigns can keep running, because it's like, it's effectively a story of human achievement and striving to get to a goal. And I think that kind of also leads us nicely into kind of the purpose-led creativity that lots of brands are trying to speak to. I think lots of the awards in Cannes this year were trying to, they're trying to lean into popular culture commentary. And we spoke about that in episode 1. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a movement. That's a bit of a trend, isn't it? Everyone's trying to lean into this.
Yeah, if I remember rightly, a few years back, there was a sort of bit of a debate raging on the industry magazines around purpose. And there was the one school of thought that was saying like, well, advertising is to sell, the David Ogilvy mantra. And then the others were saying, actually, brands can have a view on culture and change things. And so I think now we're seeing people realize that you can kind of have a bit of both.
And I think we're going to see more and more of this. I think the challenge is just making sure you're doing it honestly and getting all in there and doing it not to sell product. And people see through that very quickly.
The thing I wanted to get into as well is marketing as a service. This would be really interesting. So for me, this is where I think they could actually improve the campaign. When we think about like, does it make you think different? You said it, it's like, yeah. But does it make you behave differently? I think that's where it's a little bit of a grey area for me.
What could they have done to make this even bigger rather than it just be a promotion for the Paralympics? What was there anything else you feel that they could have done to make this even more powerful?
So an example, I suppose, of what they could have done here is that there are all these athletes, and athletes have support. They have fans. Could they have maybe actually led us onto like a fan page and actually ask us to pledge support somehow and ask us to take an action? So that's kind of what I was sort of meaning about marketing as a service, and that there could have been a journey, a user journey, where you click on something and then you download something on your app. Download an app on your phone.
Download a phone on your
something
app.
on your app.
I tried to download a phone on my app the other day. It didn't work.
But yeah. Could they have built a community online through this? Absolutely, they could have.
Yeah, I agree. I think they could have done that. I think it's, in a way, do you know what I do? I think there's a risk that it would have diminished things a bit, because it would have complicated, I think, the message. So I think there's something beautiful about the simplicity of this. It's just entertainment. It does plant a seed. I think it does achieve some changes in thought, and I think behavior. I could feel myself changing just watching it. I think it's then the job of us, really, what we have to then do is hold on to those conscious moments and try and make them part of our daily routine, try and make them part of our daily pathways of the way that we approach things. And if it's done that in any way, then I think it's really winning. I feel like we've moved on to the humankind scale now, Chomoi.
So we're pretty sure it's a 7. We talked about craft, didn't we? It's like, it's inspiring as an idea and it's beautifully crafted. And I think just hearing what you're saying, it feels like an 8. So, an 8 changes the way people think and feel. And then I guess if it changes behavior, then it's creeping into 9 territory. Changes the way people live, changes the way people behave. So yeah, my feeling, just again listening to you, is it sort of feels like an 8.5.
Could it be a 9? Could it change the way people live? Does it encourage people to get into sport? Because that's the difference, isn't it? With 8, you're talking about think, feel. 9 is do, right? 9 is like, are they going to change the way they behave?
I think definitely it's like raised the bar. We're seeing a lot of these like real gritty ads coming out with a kind of exciting, upbeat track, high production values. I think about Viva la Vulva for La Libresse, and it just means we can't keep doing these to stand out. So I'm really intrigued to see what's coming next as well.
Me too. I mean, it's a brilliant campaign, evolving wonderfully. Can't wait for the next one. So let's move on to campaign number 2, which is Vax, Wax and Chillax from Coors Light. This one took the bronze, so not quite as a high achievement as the previous campaign, Superhuman. It got a bit of bad rep. All makes sense in a moment, but it basically alienated both the pro-vaccination people of the world and the anti-vax. So it managed to divide people, but not necessarily in a good way. It'll make more sense if we roll the video. So let's roll the video. Let's play it out, and we'll dig into it.
Journey to an oasis of safety, personal grooming, and cold beer. At Vax, Wax, and Chillax, you'll experience reason and beauty
Hi, welcome in.
as our highly trained staff provide free COVID vaccinations, hair removal, and cold Coors Light.
Ooh, that feels good.
Your dating life and chances of staying alive just got a lot better.
I'm afraid of needles. And I'm afraid of
being alone for the rest of my life.
I'm a real doctor they hired.
Shed unwanted body hair and misconceptions so you can chillax into a romantic summer. You resisted science, but no one can resist a smooth, hairless body. After you get vaxxed and waxed, enjoy a cold Coors Light
Time to chillax.
and prepare for a cool summer in our chillax room.
After the chillax room, I'm ready to hang out and drink Coors Light.
It's time you join the rest of the dating pool and scientific community.
Located at 2104 Colorado Boulevard in the heart of downtown Eagle Rock.
Have a blue hot dog.
Yeah.
So book an appointment online.
If you won't do it for humanity, do it to get lucky.
Yeah, that's... I'm glad we're... Oh, God. How do you start this one off? This is just weird, isn't it? I think that's what it makes me feel like. Weird and slightly awkward. It gives me vibes of like Twin Peaks and retro 80s, content, or 70s even. But the casting is awkward. The script is weird. It's like, oh, where are they trying to position this?
Yeah, I mean, stylistically, it's very well done of this genre, and I was just like spotting little things like when the guy pulls the pipe up and he's about, and then the audio kicks in. They purposely left in the fact that audio starts before the pipe reaches his mouth, and then one of the actors is actually looking at the wrong camera. So I get all of that, and it's quite fun trying to spot all of these like engineered mistakes. I think the question mark I have is, as a brand trying to jump on the trend, blatantly own this hot girl summer type thing. They don't actually say hot girl summer, but and this own this insight around dating and the fact that everyone was like stuck inside. That's quite smart.
Yeah, so I think if we dig into some of kind of the insights, I think that's quite important as we try and break this down. So I think there was this, the reading we did around this, there was a thing, particularly in the US, I think, where it's like on dating apps, there would be this expression that I'm vaxxed and waxed, as in vaccinated. Therefore, you can hang out with other people, safe, and then waxed as in prepared, for, I guess, intimacy. So I think this was going around anyway, and obviously that became the core idea. The chillax bit, I think, Now, obviously, that's the beer coming in. They obviously put that in the ad. It's like, and then chillax. I'm going to chillax with a Coors Light. I might be wrong here, but it also feels a little bit like it's borrowing a little bit from that whole Netflix and chill phrase that was also flying around for a few years. And it is kind of consistent. They have been a brand. Coors Light have been a brand that have been really playful and silly. I don't know if you remember some of the other campaigns. There was that one. The one that sticks in my head the most, actually, is the guy swimming up the mountain in the snow to like an après ski party. And I think that the point there was that, Coors Light is even more refreshing than swimming through snow uphill.
I know what you mean. It's just they're really trying hard to do different. And that's just getting harder and harder. You have to go wilder and wackier and weirder.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing a bit of that here, aren't we? I mean, I do applaud the fact that they're trying to kind of like mix platforms, and there's, you could walk into the shop. This is a little film, but it does feel a bit like maybe the way it like was put together might be shorter little TikToks rather than a big, hero film, and then see the actual shop. I'm feeling like a locked off camera shot across the road of the real shop, just like ASMR, watching people go in and go out. I kind of want to see the reality of it, but then I do come back to the video. It's ethereal, feels like a dream. It's kind of done that quite successfully. So yeah, for me, just a few too many things that it's actually quite hard to dig into, isn't it?
Yeah. What's the intent? Are they trying to sell more Coors Light? They are, because that's it doesn't feel like it's totally purpose driven. It's like they're playing on an insight and linking it to the product. And I think that's the bit where I was like, is this just really clever? Am I missing it? Is my small little brain not getting it? And it's just a stroke of genius. Clearly they are a brand that embraces humor. They're not taking themselves too seriously. So they're clearly just owning the more playful space of beer, right? It's a lighter beer, lower alcohol, lower calories. They're making it fun. It's not a serious session beer. They're not pretending to be serious. They've been leaning into humor for a long time. It's playful stuff, right? And that's what they're trying to own. This episode is all about Cannes, right? And award-winning work. And this picked up a bronze. Okay, so still being recognized in the community as something that was above others, because it got the bronze award, which is an achievement. What do you think? Why do you think why did it pick up a bronze? What were the elements that you think it did well?
Yeah, I think it's you look at it and you go like, well, that's different. That doesn't look like a normal beer advert. So from that point of view, sort of creative bravery, there's a cleverness about jumping on a hashtag, right? So there's that, and being relevant to what's happening in culture. You go tick. Stylistically, from an art direction point of view, it's really on point, like the soft jazz. I sort of just have it playing in my head at the end there. And all of the kind of like quirky weirdness does that quite well, doesn't it?
Yeah, for what it is, I think it does it really well. I think we spent quite a lot of time talking into like, is it working? Does it work? And trying to dissect it. But actually, for what it is, it's very well executed. We're seeing it as divisive, but the concept itself, they've owned it, haven't they? I mean, they've really owned the concept. They've executed it really well. They've built on chillax, vax, rhymed. It's really well thought through, and it is well executed. I think what we've been getting caught up on is the kind of, does it work? And I think it's, if we think about how it changes behavior, is it getting them to take an action? We talk about, this show being about dissecting things and trying to understand them and the mechanics of how they work and getting people to, change how they think, feel, and do. I don't know if it achieved that, if it did that.
Do you know, at the beginning of this, I actually kind of struggled with this ad. I've got to admit, because, I was just wondering, whether I got it. I was just trying to sort of like, I couldn't figure it out. But now I'm kind of sold. I think just listening to what you're saying as well, I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, I kind of quite like this ad.
Okay. And so how do we like to bring things back to the humankind scale? That's the kind of scale that we use for judging creative. Where do you think this sits on the scale? Obviously goes from 1 to 10, with 10 being change the world and 1 being it's a destructive idea. Where is it sitting for you?
It's a tricky one because I think there's some inspirational qualities here. But at the same time, I know that what the brand stood for when they ran the ad, they were saying get vaxxed and all of it, get waxed and chill, axe. So, you kind of get what the brand stands for, you get their purpose. Is it intelligent? So I'm floating around kind of like, you can see like the 5, 6, and 7. And I'm probably going to go with 5 because I don't think it passes the intelligence test.
I think that's pretty fair. This scale is tough, right? We say it. I mean, I almost want to repeat this every episode. This is a tough scale, right, to get up. So 5 is actually a really good score. Obviously, we know it got the bronze award. So it's a more than credible campaign and more than credible piece of work. I think I'm just reminding myself of their of the purpose. And I think there's an article here that I was looking at earlier that's like Coors Light. The aim is that it's a brand that champions and creates the most refreshing moments in culture.
Yeah.
Is it leaning into one of those with this? All their other ads, I can see how that works in terms of the brand's purpose, right? Is this one of the most refreshing moments in culture? I think this is an outlier, and therefore it's not really communicating the brand's purpose. It's really hard to juxtapose vaccinations, waxing, and a beer and think, yeah, this is one of the most refreshing moments in culture. It simply isn't. And for that reason, I think it's a bit of an outlier. And therefore, I'm going to mark it down a bit on the humankind scale. Respect for them to getting the bronze. Don't disagree with that. But I would say I put it down as a 4. Don't really know what the brand stands for properly with this ad. We should probably start to wrap up because we've been having a great chat, but good things must come to an end. We're introducing a new wrap up now. This is episode 2. We're going to be learning as we go, but I think takeaways are important, Chomoi. We definitely want to be leaning into the principles and the things that we're discussing each week, and a bit of a summary of what we think these different campaigns have lent into in terms of principles and what they've achieved, what's been great, what are the takeaways, what are the things that they both did well. And I think what I've been thinking about as we've been talking is that they're both very topical. They're both leaning into, popular cultures, the zeitgeist of the moment. With Channel 4's being about the Paralympic Games, an event that was coming up, and Coors obviously jumping on that hashtag.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, isn't it? Being relevant, being topical, jumping on a cultural conversation. If you can write a hashtag for it, or if it links to an existing hashtag, that's kind of powerful for a brand. For me, the big takeaway is purpose has evolved. It's got more sophisticated, and it's less of a question of like, should we do purpose-driven ads? It's more like it's a tool in the toolbox, and then it's like how well you do it or how far you go down that route. So yeah, and it's just nice to see purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's more and more. I think that's the trend we're seeing, right? That brands, it's not a question of should you. It's yes, you need to lean into that. People want that, but you need to do it all the way. And I think the Channel 4, Superhuman did that.
The other one I put down was about disruption. So like, it comes out screaming to me. So it's like being disruptive as a brand and doing disruptive advertising, just getting harder and harder. It's like I dare you. All right, I dare you more, and then I dare you again. So that again makes me think. Actually, is disruption really the only way to stand out? Because that's just, I don't know where that ends. It's like a space race.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'd written down shock factor. Certainly the Channel 4, Superhuman. That was in parts that was shocking and captivating because they were showing that the raw of it, the rawness of things. That kept me hooked. And I think there's always going to be room to shock, right? That's what gets attention. That's what cuts through the noise. Bland doesn't cut it. It's been great digging into these. Thanks for listening. Thanks for giving us your time. We hope you've found some nuggets to take away from today. And it's over and out from me.
Nice. I've enjoyed it. See you next time.
Beyond the Creative is the first show of the Remarkable channel. If you want to know when the next episode of Beyond the Creative is out, or for any other future shows for that matter, you can head over to theremarkablechannel.tv and choose your favourite way to subscribe, whether that's audio or video.